G'day ladies and gents, welcome to War Thunder with Mags, and welcome aboard the Horten 229. Now the HO229 is possibly the most anticipated aircraft Gaijin has ever put into War Thunder, and as a result of its performance in game now, many people are very disappointed in the aircraft. What I find interesting is that most of the disappointment is really due to a misconception about what this plane is. Now the battle running in the background is my third ever battle in the HO229. This was a loss. This was the first time I started getting kills and working out how to make this plane work. Now this was a 31-minute battle, so I'm going to do some pretty serious editing because there was a lot of non-events between particular things that happened. And I'm just going to have a talk about some of the things about the HO229 that people don't seem to realise. First things first, you need to pay very careful attention to the name of the aircraft. This is the Horten 229 V3. Now that is a very important name to note because it designates exactly which version of the Horten this is. The V3 is the third prototype, the one that was captured by the Americans and is now in a restoration hangar somewhere in the Smithsonian. Another important thing to note here, the V3 is the prototype that never actually flew. Now just taking a quick look around the cockpit, you're going to see a major issue. The cockpit itself is absolutely gorgeous. I'm not particularly fond of the Comic Sans script on the dashboard, but you'll see me zooming in and out of the targeting reticle at the moment. You'll notice that without zooming in, you cannot actually fire shots in this aircraft. You cannot see the targeting reticle or where the rounds are going. That's a rather major design flaw in my opinion. And speaking of targeting reticles, or guns, armaments, the Horten 229, there's multiple complaints going around. Some people claim that it shouldn't be armed with guns, some people, where are the bombs, it was meant to be a bomber. The V3 was completely unarmed. And this is the point where Gaijin has had to make a choice on the aircraft. The V3 was never equipped with cannons. There were two cannon armaments that were intended to go into the production model, but the prototypes were never tested with them. They were never installed, they were never balanced into the plane. The second thing is it was intended to be able to carry bombs, specifically an 1,000 kilo bomb load, in either a single 1,000 kilo bomb or two 500 bombs in configuration. It was meant to be carried in an internal bomb bay that would sit behind the main landing wheel at the front of the aircraft. None of the prototypes ever had the bomb bay installed in the aircraft either. So at this point Gaijin have had to make a choice in order to arm this plane and get it into battles inside of War Thunder. They've had to pull something that was proposed to be fitted to the aircraft, but was never actually fitted to any of the prototypes. So what do you give the Horten? Do you give it everything it was meant to have, so bombs and guns? Do you give it a gun configuration? Do you give it just a bomb configuration? Well, giving it both seems a little extreme considering the prototypes were never armed with anything. The anti-paper planers are going to complain this plane never had any of the armaments that it's currently carrying. If you give it just the bombs, well, the Germans already have the Arado, an unarmed jet bomber. Could you imagine the riot if this plane was installed into the game and it only had a bomb carrying capability as well? The flaming would be massive. Gaijin have chosen the lighter of the two cannon armaments, and the one that I was actually hoping that they would go for, the machine cannon 103s. Now these are a lower fire rate than the 108s, but a vastly higher velocity cannon, far more suitable for high-speed combat. This was one of the two cannon configurations that would have been installed into the HO229. The other option that was available was a 4 machine cannon 108 configuration, basically the same armaments as the 262. And yes, Gaijin had to make the choice on which armament they were going to fit, because why both the 4 108 configuration and the 2 103 configuration were both proposed for the Horten 229, there was never a decision made on exactly which one would be fit to the production model. The prototype had been captured and the war was over long before anybody got to make that choice. So both of them are valid options to select. So that covers the guns and why the aircraft doesn't have bombs. Technically it should have nothing at all. Gaijin's had to tinker around with the aircraft a little bit to give us an armed machine that we can use within the boundaries of War Thunder. So on to the next complaint. Why is it so slow? It was supposed to be capable of 1,000 kilometers an hour. Production model may have been capable of those sort of speeds, but not the V3, which is what we have. Now the reason why is the engines. The V3 prototype is not actually using the engines that were intended for the production model of the Horten 229. The engines the HO229 prototype runs on is the Junkers Jumo 004B turbojets. Now these things have just short of 2,000 pounds of thrust each. They're effectively the same engines that the 262 runs on. They've got a 6 combustion chambers over an 8-stage compressor with a single-stage turbine. They're very much a basic jet engine. And they were never going to be sufficient if the HO229 was ever to achieve its goal of 1,000 kilometres an hour, which is why the production model was not intended to run on this engine. This was just for prototype testing of the airframe. The production model was intended to run on the Heinkel HES011 engine. Now this engine had a dual-rod 3-stage axial compressor over 16 combustion chambers and a 2-stage axial turbine. Basically, its spool time was a quarter of that of the Junkers engine. The thrust it put out was 2,700 pounds per engine, so the aircraft overall was about 1,400 pounds of thrust better off. To give you an idea just how much more powerful these engines actually were, this design and the specifications for the Heinkel engine are actually more powerful than the engines and more advanced than the engines on the Meteor F8 that you already see in game. It's also worth noting another aircraft that you may have heard of that these engines were intended for was the ME262 HG2. So why don't we get these engines on the 229? Well, for starters, only 19 of the engines were ever built. None of the engines were ever fitted to a 229 prototype, ever. And most of the prototypes that were built suffered catastrophic engine failures after 15 minutes of operation. But that's the answer as to why the HO229 is not capable of its fabled 1,000 km/h top speed. The truth was, the prototype, the V3 that we never have, was never fitted with the engines that was intended for it to have in order to achieve that goal and that speed. It had the testing engines that were available that were relatively reliable at the time in order to test the qualities of the airframe and see whether or not the aircraft was even viable to begin with. And there's my first kill. So now let's start getting into the flight model that we have in game itself and the problems that I see it having. First things first, why it doesn't have the engines it was intended to have, so therefore it should not be capable of 1,000 km/h. It should be faster than it currently is. Second problem I have with the flight model is the stress tolerance of the airframe. Trying to pull manoeuvres anywhere upwards of 4 Gs at over 400 km/h will result in this aircraft damn near splitting itself in half every single time. That is ridiculous. And I can see how these problems have got into the game. Gaijin has actually done the flight model right, just for the wrong aircraft. What do I mean? Well, as I mentioned at the start, the V3, the version that we have in game, never actually flew. There is no flight data for this aircraft. The only people who could have ever flown it is the US after they captured it. And if they have actually flown it, or they did actually fly it, they've never released any data or information on the test flights. So how do you build a flight model? Well, there is flight data available for the V2, the one that had an engine failure and wound up crashing and killing the test pilot. Two interesting things about the V2 prototype. Firstly, the engines were restricted to only 75% of their maximum power because of the modifications that had to be done to the subframe of the aircraft during the prototyping process. They were afraid that if the engines were ever allowed to go to 100% power, the wing would rip itself to pieces. After flying the HO229 quite a bit, if I had to give you a number on exactly how much more power the HO229 needed, 20 to 25% would be pretty close to the money. Keeping in mind that the V3 that we have in game actually had no substructure modifications done at all. It was built entirely to the blueprints for the final version of the V2 before it crashed, so it was completely intact with no modifications underneath. Second thing to look at is maneuverability. Now, as I said before, the aircraft breaks up if you try and pull extreme manoeuvres at over 400 km/h. Interestingly enough, the test pilot was also instructed on the V2 to never perform any manoeuvres in the HO229 above 400 km/h, as it could result in the breakage of the aircraft due to the same modifications that were done to the substructure that prevented the engines from being able to run at 100% power. And there's my second kill too. I believe the flight model for the HO229 we see in game is actually based on that of the V2, but none of the adjustments have been made to account for the fact that this is supposed to be the V3, with the V3's engines and no modifications done to the subframe. So really what I think this aircraft needs to have done to it is it needs to have its engine performance increased by around 20 to 25%, and it needs to be able to manoeuvre at about 600 km/h rather than 400. The biggest problem with its manoeuvrability at the moment truly is that the aircraft itself, engine-wise, doesn't start developing full power to the engines until about 550 kilometers an hour, but you cannot maneuver at that speed, so you are constantly operating at below the engine's optimal power levels. So that's the flight model and why I believe it is the way it is, and hopefully a little bit of information to make you understand why the 1000, 1000, 1000 aircraft is not present in game. It was never built. Now, landing the HO229, now this has actually probably been modelled fairly realistically. Landing this thing was apparently an absolute bitch in real life, and it's much the same in game. Now I want you to watch the speeds and how gently I bring this down. To give you an idea on how difficult it is to put the HO on the ground, it is like trying to land an aircraft that is balancing on a pogo stick, that is balancing on a unicycle, on a runway, at 150 kilometers an hour. This is the second smoothest landing I've ever had in this aircraft. Boing. Boing again, tips over. Bonk. But it's all good, you do get a repair. So third match in the 229, second place with 2 kills, Avenger X2, Fighter Rescuer, Shadow Streak X2, Soft Landing, don't know how I got that, Terror of the Sky, Bulletproof, Silver Trophy Reward, 28,935 Silver Lions. It was a loss. The last 3 aircraft was 2 F-80Cs and a B-57, and they really didn't want to be captured or run into the rest of the team, so they avoided us for most of the match. We had a little encounter with them in the end, but nobody shot anyone down. They mainly stayed at distance and dragged the battle out to a ground forces loss. Now, one last thing that I forgot to mention, another complaint that seems to come up about the aircraft fairly commonly is the 229 is made of wood. It should be light and it should be fast. Just because it's made of wood doesn't mean it's light. To give you an equivalency here, the 262, which carries the same engines as the 229, its loaded combat weight is 6.4, almost 6.5 tonnes. The HO229's loaded flight weight was 6.9 tonnes, and keep into account the HO229 V3 does not carry guns, neither does the V2, so if you were to put in the weight of the guns as well, you're looking at an aircraft that is over 7 tonnes, despite the fact that it's made of wood. It comes down to the old children's riddle. What weighs more, a ton of feathers or a ton of bricks? Well, they both weigh exactly the same. You just need a lot more of one than the other. The HO229 is made of wood, but it's made of a lot of wood. So now for something a little bit different. This is a live comms match recorded 2 days after the match you just watched. I'm flying out with Combat Wombat, he's in his HO229 V3, and Semper Morton, he is flying out in his D13. I have made a slight adjustment to the skin of my aircraft. I've now got a custom skin that's all polished aluminium, but that is not the only modification that has been done to the aircraft. It currently has all of the level 1 mods, including the ammunition belts unlocked, the compressor, the wings repair, and I'm currently working on the engine. So this time I'm between 50 and 60% upgraded, and this is the kind of performance you can expect from the aircraft as you unlock the upgrades down the track. Hope you enjoy.
Upgrades have you got, Mags?
Airframe, wings, compressor, belts, working on the engine now. Climbing out at 250 to 300 to 5,000 feet, and then I'm heading towards the bombing target, see if I can intercept the jet bombers before they get there.
Deck.
Some seriously thick cloud.
Yep, they can ride all the way to the bombing targets without ever actually having to show their dot at the moment.
I'll do the same thing, just can't see an end to this cloud. I'm at the bases, I don't see it.
Yeah, he's to our right.
Oh yeah, I just saw a glimpse of it. Like, base of the clouds.
But our Irish assailant dude's diving on him. Yep,
I
yeah,
spotted
can see
one plane coming in, skimming the base of the clouds.
No visual here.
Just a dot spot, I haven't actually seen the plane. B-24, Panzerzerker.
Roger that, still no visual, 5.5 to your rear.
He's going for another point.
Still can't see him. Any other targets?
Playing level, Mags.
Yep, levelling out at 7-8. I have visual on a B-17 coming in from the right, 2 kilometres out, moving to intercept.
Oh,
I fucking crashed it! What a fucking tosspot!
Target down.
Ugh. Bullshit.
You always get those arseholes who would rather suicide than get shot
there's
down.
another B-24.
Roger, no visual.
Ripped his tail off. Nice.
Oh god, no 17s in it. P80.
Yep. Another one.
He's ground attacking. Oh. What is he doing?
2 B-17s above, going vertical. Oh shit, oops. 40 kilometres an hour, I'm in a stall. Come on, nose down, nose down, nose down, come on. There we go. Oh, she doesn't like that too much.
Watch out.
Roger, I see. Diving in on yous now.
Thank you. Just about dodged that. Oh shit, I pulled up too steep. I'm completely spent on.
Somehow I got the kill on that B-17. I didn't think the damage was that bad.
Okay, I'm going head on with
Don't.
he set me on fire.
Yeah, the Huib is a big target from the front. That's alright, I'll avenge you.
I hit him though, but it did nothing.
Gotta pop air brakes so I can drop in his tail and not overshoot him.
Yep. Brownings are still flamethrowers.
The M3s are, the fucking M2s are fucking doing nothing.
P-80's down.
Oh, I got the kill on that P80.
Not sure how that works since I blew his fucking tail off.
Really? Huh.
All good, I'll go take out my frustrations on this P-51.
What is that? That's an AI. That is obscene. How fast is that AI going?
Yep, gotta love the bloody AI. And there goes the P-51. He's down.
Oh fuck, he's actually gonna do some damage. Fucking piss off.
You alright there?
I got an F6 F or an F4 F, I don't know what it is. Apparently keeps up with a D13ish, you know.
Yeah, I know. AI totally balanced, working as intended. That's the P-51 down. It looks like we've got a B-17 above the clouds on the south side of the map. I'll bring it back around and help you with the AI.
I got it. No, fucking don't stall now.
I'm right above you now, ready to drop in if you need me to.
Oh, you fucking twats, I'm stalling.
I'll have a kill shot in about 5 seconds, you might want to take him out. Good hit.
Well, my ammo spent on a bloody AI, I couldn't only just about turn with. Right.
Oh good, it looks like they've only got that last B-17 left. It was above the clouds to the south side. It looks like it's already dropped its bombs. It's got to come back to the runway, or it can hang around at altitude.
I'm enjoying this D13 again. I was on a mare with it before, but it's actually pretty damn good now.
Yeah, it's an absolute monster now.
Must actually be able to do damage with your guns.
Well, good game, guys. So, one hell of a match. Results for that match were 3 kills and 1 assist. Fighter Rescuer, Supporting Fire, Teamwork, Avenger X2, Shadow Strike X2, Windstreak X3. I unlocked the Finnish Air Force Randell, the Best Squad, Terror of the Sky, Bulletproof, On Hand, a 1500 Battle Trophy, 67,875 Silver Lions, 3,981 Research Points, and another chunk out of the engine. And as you can see, the upgrades do make quite a bit of difference. They still don't make the aircraft as good as I think it should be, but I'm able to work with the performance increases of the upgrades and make this thing perform at an acceptable level. I've learned how to work around its flight characteristics. And I really am enjoying flying the aircraft. The machine cannons in the front of it, the 103s, are lethal. I love the manoeuvrability, as much as you have to watch the speed very carefully so you don't break the plane in half. It's like flying a very fragile, big single-wing Zero. And I really like the Zeros, so this works well for me. But I can see it won't be to everyone's taste. I do think the aircraft still needs some tweaking, and I imagine there will be some tweaking done over time, much with every other flight model in the game. This one will be no different. It will need some work done. Anybody who really thought the flight model would be 100% perfect the second it came out probably hasn't been paying a lot of attention to War Thunder flight models and their history since they started playing the game. They're never right. So yes, I was truly worried this plane would be nothing but a gimmick, but it seems that once you get used to it, you can make it perform. Anyways, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed this video. Click like if you do, subscribe if you want to see more. Fly smart, fly safe, and I'll catch you in the skies.